You know that heavy silence that falls when the phone rings and you see a name that hasn't popped up in decades? That's exactly what happened to me on a Tuesday morning 3 months ago. Her name, flashing on the screen. 40 years. 40 years since we last had a real conversation. My heart hammered like I was 25 again. But my 71-year-old body quickly reminded me that time had marched on. I answered. And what she said in those 15 minutes of conversation shattered and rebuilt everything I thought I knew about regret, about choices, about the weight of unspoken words. I'm 71 now, and there are things only time can teach you. But there are other things time hides from you, buries so deep you forget they exist, until the phone rings and it all surfaces at once. It was 1983 when we split up. I was 31, she was 29, married for 7 years. No kids, thank God, I thought back then. Today I know that just made it easier to forget, easier to pretend those 7 years never happened. We broke up over reasons that seemed monumental at the time. I was working too much. She wanted attention. I wanted to build a career. She wanted to build a family. Arguments about money, about priorities, about futures we couldn't align. In the end, it was almost civilized. We signed the papers, divided our things, and went our separate ways. I remarried 5 years later, had 2 kids, built the career I'd craved, bought the big house, the foreign car, everything I thought I needed. And for 40 years, I rarely thought about her. Or at least, that's what I convinced myself. The truth is, she crossed my mind more often than I'd care to admit. But I'd shove those thoughts under the rug because thinking about her meant questioning the choices I'd made, and I wasn't ready for that. Her voice was different, more mature, more tired, but it was still her voice. She said my name the way only she did, with that particular intonation no one else in the world used, and before I could ask anything, she started talking. She told me she was sick. Nothing terminal, according to the doctors, but serious enough to make her rethink everything, to make her look back and see all the loose ends she'd left untied. And I was one of them. She said she needed to tell me something she kept for 40 years, something she carried alone all this time because she thought it was the right thing to do, the mature, sensible thing. And then she said it. She said she never stopped loving me, completely. That she remarried, yes, that she had a good life, that she was happy at many moments, but that a part of her always stayed stuck in that small apartment where we lived, in those Sunday mornings when we had coffee in bed and made plans that never materialized. She said the biggest mistake of her life was letting me go so easily, and that my biggest mistake was letting her go without a fight, without even trying to save what we had. I was silent. What a heavy silence, heavy as lead. 40 years of life had happened between us, 40 years of choices, of other people, of other stories, of other loves, of children, of homes, of jobs, of wins and losses, and suddenly all of it seemed small compared to what could have been. She wasn't asking for anything. She made that perfectly clear. She didn't want to go back, didn't want to redo anything, wasn't having some fantasy of a fresh start. She just needed me to know, needed to get it off her chest before it was too late. She said she'd spent 40 years wondering if I felt it too, if I also looked back sometimes and wondered, what if? And now she knew. She didn't have time to keep wondering. The illness made her realize that time is the one thing we can't get back. can't negotiate, can't buy back. So she decided to call. And here's the part that haunts me most to this day. After she hung up, I sat on the couch for hours. My current wife was out of town visiting our daughter in another city. The house was empty, and for the first time in decades, I allowed myself to truly remember. Remember the scent of her hair, her laugh, the way she'd wrinkle her nose when she was concentrating on reading, the silly fights we used to have over which movie to watch, the plans we made to travel to Europe and never did. And I realized something devastating. I realized I'd kept it too, that I'd carried it all these years too, but I was so busy building the perfect life, so focused on proving to myself that I'd made the right choices, that I never stopped to look in that dark corner where I'd locked away all those feelings. And you know what's scariest about all of this? It's realizing that we live an entire life thinking we've made the right choices, that we've followed the right path, that we've made the most sensible decisions, and suddenly a 15-minute phone call calls everything into question. I'm not saying I should have stayed with her. I'm not saying my current life isn't good or that I regret everything. My wife is a wonderful person. My children are my joy. My life has meaning and purpose. But I am saying I spent 40 years avoiding a conversation that needed to happen. 40 years pretending it didn't matter, that it was just a closed chapter, a turned page. And this lie I told myself created a wound that never fully healed. It just stayed there underneath, covered, ignored, but always present. And this made me think of you. How many conversations are you avoiding right now? How many people are there in your life whom you've let go without saying what needed to be said? How many phone calls do you not make because you think it's too late? Too much time has passed. It doesn't make sense to stir up the past anymore. How many times do you look at your phone, see a name, and think about calling but don't? How many messages do you start typing and then delete? How many excuses do you invent for yourself about why today isn't the right day? Why the person is probably busy? Why maybe it's better to wait a little longer? Tell me here in the comments, who is this person in your life? Write it like this: I should have talked to name. You don't need details if you don't want to. You don't need to explain the whole story. But when you write it, when you admit it out loud, when you take it out of yourself and put it into the world, something changes. The shame lessens a bit. The weight gets lighter, and your comment can make someone else realize there's still time, that they're not alone in this fight. So tell me, who is it? I started talking to her again after that first call. Not every day, not every week, but once in a while we'd chat. Light conversations about life, about her kids and mine, about how the world has changed, about memories only we two share. And you know what I discovered in these conversations? I discovered that we romanticize the past too much when we don't have access to it. That the person I loved 40 years ago doesn't exist anymore, just like the man she loved doesn't exist anymore. I changed, she changed, we grew up, grew old, went through things, learned lessons, became completely different people. If we met for the first time today, we probably wouldn't even be interested in each other in the same way. But I also discovered that some things don't change. There's a connection, a shared history that no one else in the world has. There's an intimacy that comes from having built dreams together, even if those dreams never came true. And there's value in that. Not the romantic value we place when we're young and think love conquers all, but a different kind of value, deeper, more honest, more mature. The value of looking at another person and seeing your own history reflected in them, seeing your choices, your untrodden paths, your alternate life versions, your unfulfilled possibilities. But here's the real lesson I learned from all of this. The lesson isn't about regret. It's not about going back or undoing choices or living in the past. It's not about what ifs or what could have been. The lesson is about courage. Courage to be honest while there's still time. Courage to speak the hard truths. Courage to be vulnerable even when it's scary. My ex-wife had the courage to pick up the phone and tell the truth after 40 years. That was one of the bravest things I've ever seen anyone do. And did it change anything in practice? It changed everything and nothing at the same time. It didn't change our concrete situation. It didn't undo marriages, didn't alter the course of our lives, didn't bring back lost years. But it changed the weight we were carrying. It changed the silence that existed between us. It changed the lie we were living, each of us pretending it never mattered, and that matters more than you can imagine right now. You'll only understand how much it matters when you're older, when you look back and realize how many conversations you put off that never happened. You see, when we're young, we think we have all the time in the world to fix things, to say what needs to be said, to make amends, to apologize, to admit our feelings, to be honest about what we feel. We think later is always available, that tomorrow is a guaranteed option, that we'll have another chance, that the person will still be there when we finally gather the courage, and we live in this comfortable illusion, this reassuring lie, until something happens. An illness, a death, an unexpected call, an accident, bad news. And suddenly we realize that all the time we thought we had was just a fantasy, a story we told ourselves to postpone the discomfort of being vulnerable. Time ran out while we were waiting for the right moment to use it. And there's nothing crueler than realizing that when it's already too late. I have a friend, Roberto, who worked with me for 25 years at the same company. We started together, climbed together, faced the same battles, shared the same stresses. He was more than a colleague, he was a brother. But we had a nasty fight about 15 years ago. Something that happened at work related to a promotion, credit for an important project. Those corporate ego things that seem huge at the moment, but in the end don't matter at all. Harsh words were spoken, accusations were made, and neither of us had the courage to back down afterwards. We still talked, of course. We still worked together. We were still polite, professional, cordial. But that real friendship we had, that genuine intimacy, was lost. And I always thought that one day we would talk about it. One day, when the right time came, when the wounds had healed, when pride wasn't shouting so loud anymore, I would bring it up and we would sort it out like mature adults. One day. That day never came. Roberto died of a heart attack 2 years ago. 63 years old. Too young, too soon, too unfair. And I went to the funeral, carrying that unsaid conversation like a giant stone in my chest. I looked at the coffin, saw his wife crying, saw his devastated children, and I thought about all the times I could have called him, all the times I could have sent a text, all the opportunities I let slip by because I thought I had time, because I thought I could wait a little longer, because my pride was more important than our friendship, and now he was there, cold, silent, and all the time in the world wouldn't give me another minute with him. Not a chance to say I was wrong, to say I miss you, to say our friendship mattered more than that stupid fight. That reminds me of my father, too, and that's a wound that will never fully close. He died when I was 52. He was 81. And do you know how many real conversations I had with my father during our entire lives together? Real conversations, where we talked about feelings, about fears, about love, about the meaning of life, about regrets, about dreams. Maybe 3 or 4 in over 5 decades. The rest was football, work, jokes, complaints about the weather, comfortable superficiality, because men of his generation, and mine to some extent, were raised not to talk about these things. We were taught that feelings are weak, that vulnerability is shame, that real men don't cry, don't open up, don't admit fear or doubt. And now he's gone, and I have a huge list of questions I'll never be able to ask, of things I'll never be able to say. I'll never know if he was truly happy. I'll never know what his regrets were. I'll never be able to tell him that I loved him, not in the way I should have. I'll never be able to ask for forgiveness for the times I was distant, impatient, critical. And that list haunts me. It haunts me more than any regret about career or money or success or failure, because those other things I can process, I can understand, I can make peace with them. But with my father, there's no second chance. There's no going back. The door closed forever. And there's my oldest daughter, too, Marina. She's 42 now, lives in another city, has her own family, and for years, many years, we had a distant, cold relationship full of unspoken things. She felt I neglected her as a child, that I worked too much, that I was never present for important moments, and she was right. I was building a career, chasing promotions, traveling for work, coming home late, leaving early, missing school plays, missing games, missing bedtime stories. And that created a distance between us that lasted for decades. We talked, of course, but they were empty, obligatory conversations without depth. And I always thought it would resolve itself someday, that time would heal, that when she was older, she'd understand. But it doesn't work that way. Time doesn't heal anything you're not willing to actively work to heal. It was only when I had the courage to call her, to admit I was wrong, to apologize without excuses, to be vulnerable and honest about my own regrets, that things started to change. And today, years after that difficult conversation, we have a real, true, close relationship. But I think about the years we lost. I think about how she grew up feeling like she wasn't a priority for her dad. And that breaks my heart in a way nothing else can. But here's the truth they don't tell you when you're young. The truth is, you already know. You already know who these people are in your life. You already know which conversations you need to have. You know exactly who you need to call, who you need to visit, who you need to apologize to, who you need to truly say I love you to, who you need to make peace with, who you need to be honest with. You know it right now, this very moment, as you're hearing my words. A name, or several names, are popping into your head. You're seeing faces, hearing voices, remembering moments, and you're doing the same thing I did for decades. You're pushing it off. You're telling yourself you'll do it when things calm down, when you have more time, when the moment is more appropriate, when you're more emotionally ready. You're making excuses. You're lying to yourself the same way I lied for most of my life. And I understand why you do it. Because it's scary. Because it's uncomfortable. Because you don't know how the person will react. Because maybe they'll reject you. Maybe they'll hurt you. Maybe they won't want anything to do with you. Because it's easier, safer, more comfortable to keep things as they are, even if as they are is bad, is painful, is incomplete. And you know what the cruelest part of it all is? It's that you'll only realize you were lying to yourself when it's too late. When the person dies and you're at the funeral with a chest full of unsaid words. When illness strikes and you realize you wasted precious time on pride and fear. When the phone rings 40 years later and you realize all the time that's passed. I got lucky. My ex-wife had the courage to call. My friend Roberto didn't get that chance. My father died without us having the conversations that mattered. But with my daughter, I had the chance to fix it while there was still time. And that difference, that small difference between acting while there's time and putting it off, is everything. It's literally everything. If I could go back in time and talk to my 30-year-old, 40-year-old, even 50-year-old self, I would say this, and I want you to engrave this. Stop pretending you have time. Time is the biggest lie you tell yourself. You don't have infinite time. You have today. You have now. You have this exact moment. And the longer you wait, the harder it gets. Stop believing things will just resolve themselves. They won't. Silences aren't healed with more silence. Distances aren't shortened by waiting. Hurts don't disappear by being ignored. Stop waiting for the perfect moment that will never come. There is no perfect moment for difficult conversations. It will never be comfortable. It will never be easy. There will always be some excuse to postpone. Pick up the phone now. Send the text now. Schedule the lunch now. Apologize now, even if imperfectly. Say I love you now, even if your voice trembles. Say I miss you now, even if it feels too vulnerable. Say I was wrong now, even if your pride screams against it. Because now is the only thing you truly have. Tomorrow is a promise no one can guarantee you. And after may never come. It may simply not exist. Start valuing presence over perfection. Stop waiting for your relationship with your parents to be perfect before you visit them. They're getting older while you wait. Every day that passes is one less day you have with them. Stop waiting for your old friendship to be exactly as it was before you reach out. It won't go back to how it was because you're not the same people anymore. But it can be something new, something different, something equally valuable. Stop waiting to find the perfect words before you say how you feel. The words will never be perfect. You'll stammer, you'll stumble, you'll say things awkwardly, and that's okay. What matters is the intention, is the courage, is the effort to try. And the person on the other side, just like you, is getting older every second, is getting closer to the end, is losing time they'll never get back. This isn't morbid. This isn't pessimistic. This is the most honest reality there is. Death is the only absolute certainty in life, and it doesn't announce when it's coming. Start making the uncomfortable calls. Start having the difficult conversations. Start saying the things you're afraid to say. Start admitting when you're wrong, even when it hurts your pride. Start forgiving even when you don't receive an apology first, because waiting for the other person to make the first move is a guarantee of waiting forever. Start being vulnerable even when you're afraid of getting hurt, because in the end, when you're my age, when you're 70, 80, when you look back at the life you've lived, you won't regret the difficult conversations you had, the times you were vulnerable, the times you risked being rejected. You'll regret the ones you didn't have. You'll regret the silences you kept, the distances you could have bridged but chose not to, the bridges you could have rebuilt but left broken because it was easier, more comfortable, less threatening to your ego, less emotionally risky. And there's something else important I learned, and this is crucial. Stop saving your truths for your deathbed. Stop thinking that one day, when you're old, when you're sick, when you're near the end, when you have nothing left to lose, then you'll finally have the courage to say what you feel. My ex-wife needed a medical diagnosis, a rude awakening about her own mortality, to find the courage to call me. She waited 40 years, 4 whole decades, and almost waited too long. If her illness had been more serious, if she'd waited a few more months, maybe that conversation would never have happened. And how many people do exactly that? How many people wait until they're literally dying to say, "I love you," to ask for forgiveness, to make amends, to be honest about what they feel? And how many of those people never get to say it because death comes too fast, because a heart attack doesn't give notice, because an accident happens without warning, because life offers no guarantees, no prior notice, no last-minute chances? Today, sitting here at 71, I have a peace I didn't have at 50, at 60. Not because my life is perfect, or because I've resolved all my issues, or because I no longer have problems. I have problems. I have aches. I have regrets that will stay with me until the end. But I have peace because I've finally stopped running from the difficult conversations. Because I finally understood that courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage isn't feeling confident and secure. Courage is being afraid, having trembling hands, a knot in your stomach, and doing it anyway. It's picking up the phone even when you don't know what you're going to say. It's sending the text even when you don't know how the person will respond. It's showing up at the door even after years, decades without contact. It's saying, "I'm sorry," even when every fiber of your pride screams at you to stay quiet and keep your cool. It's saying, "I still think about you," even at the risk of sounding pathetic, needy, ridiculous. It's being vulnerable, knowing perfectly well you might get hurt, you might be rejected, you might have your heart stomped on one more time. And you know what I discovered by having these difficult conversations? I discovered that most people, most of the time, are waiting for it. They're waiting for someone to be brave enough to break the silence, to take the first step, to reach out first. They're waiting for the phone to ring, the text to arrive, the door to knock. Because they're afraid, too. They're holding on to things, carrying burdens, avoiding conversations. They're also waiting for the right moment that never comes, making the same excuses you make. And when you have the courage to take the first step, when you break the ice, when you're vulnerable first, you set both people free. You free yourself from the weight you were carrying, and you give the other person permission to be vulnerable too, to be honest too, to get the weight off their chest. After that life-changing call with my ex-wife, I made a list. I sat down with pen and paper, something I hadn't done in years, and wrote down a list of everyone I had unfinished conversations with, things unsaid, loose ends, silences that needed to be broken. There were 12 names initially, 12 people scattered throughout my life whom I had let go or hurt, or with whom I had lost contact, or to whom I had never said what needed to be said. In 3 months, I had spoken to 8 of those people. Some conversations were relatively easy, surprisingly well received, almost a relief in their simplicity. Others were the hardest things I've ever done in my 71 years of life. I cried in some. I heard harsh things in others. I was rejected in one. But all of them, absolutely all of them without exception, were worth it, even the one who rejected me, because I lifted giant stones from my chest, because I bridged distances that seemed insurmountable, because I said things that had been suffocating me from the inside for years, decades, and because I discovered that in most of those conversations, the other person was also carrying the same things, was also waiting, was also afraid, also wanted to talk, but didn't know how to start. One of those 12 names was my younger brother, Carlos. He's 66 now. We had a nasty, destructive fight 8 years ago over our mother's inheritance when she passed away. Small material things that became big because neither of us had the humility to yield, to put the relationship above money, to value 40 years of brotherhood more than some furniture and a bank account. Terrible words were said on both sides, accusations of greed, of lack of character, of dishonesty. And after that, we spent 8 whole years speaking only at Christmas and on our nieces' birthdays. That kind of cold, obligatory, superficial contact, devoid of any real affection. Polite greetings from people who were once intimate but had become strangers. I called him 2 months ago. It was one of the hardest calls of my life. My hands were shaking as I dialed. I apologized. I admitted I was wrong in many things, that I was petty, that I let money destroy something much more valuable. I admitted I missed him, that our fight was one of the things that haunted me most. And you know what he said? He started crying. This 66-year-old man, my youngest brother, cried on the phone, and he said he'd been waiting for that call for years, that he also wanted to make amends but didn't know how, that he was also tired of that absurd distance, that he missed me too, that he had things from our childhood, memories, inside jokes that only we two understood, and he had no one else in the world to share them with. Today, we talk every week, sometimes just for 5 minutes, sometimes for an hour. And every time I hang up the phone, every time I think about the 8 years we lost due to pride, stubbornness, pure and simple cowardice, 8 years I will never get back with my brother. 8 years of conversations we didn't have, of support we didn't give each other, of laughter we didn't share. So look, you who are listening to me now, who have made it this far in this story, you don't have 71 years of accumulated wisdom like I do. You haven't gone through all the losses I've been through, all the regrets I carry, but you have something I no longer have and never will again. You have time. You have today. You have now. You probably have tomorrow, next week if you're lucky, next month if life allows. And if you use that time wisely, if you have courage now instead of waiting 40 years, instead of waiting until you're old and sick, you will spare yourself a pain that is almost unbearable. It hurts to look back and see everything you left unsaid, all the bridges you burned, all the people you let go without a fight, without even trying, without at least saying, wait. It matters to me. You matter to me. I know these truths are hard to hear. I know it stings to think about them, to look at your own flaws, your own fears, your own cowardice. I know it's so much easier to keep sweeping this stuff under the rug for later, for some hazy day in the future. But if you've made it this far, if you've listened to my story all the way through without clicking away, without skipping ahead, it's because something inside you recognizes the truth in what I'm saying. It's because something inside you knows you need to act. You need to be brave. You need to do something before it's too late. This channel is a space where people like us, people who've woken up to some hard but necessary truths, share real experiences, genuine mistakes, lessons learned through blood and tears, to help others avoid making the same blunders we did. Subscribe so you don't miss the next videos where I'll share more about relationships, about regrets, about forgiveness, about how to live more truthfully, more authentically, more courageously while there's still time. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you in any way, if it made you think of someone specific, if it gave you that knot in your stomach. That means you know exactly what you need to do. And please tell me in the comments, who do you need to call today? What conversation have you been putting off for years? What bridge do you need to rebuild? Your story, your honesty, might give someone else the courage to act, to pick up the phone, to not make the same mistake of waiting 40 years. Let's build a community where we help each other be braver, more honest, more vulnerable, more present in the lives of the people we love. The people you love won't be around forever. Your parents are getting older every day. Your friends are too. That person you hurt or who hurt you is also moving towards their end, and so are you. The phone is in your hand right now. Time is ticking by second as you listen to these words. Don't wait 40 years like I did. Don't wait for a doctor's diagnosis. Don't wait for a funeral. Don't wait until it's too late and you're alone with your regrets. Make the call today. Now, as soon as this video is over, because tomorrow isn't guaranteed for anyone.